Hello, and welcome back to Rails Quest. Today, we're going to look at something that is going to make your production environment more reliable if you are using a SQLite database in production. You may remember a few months back, Rails 8 made a big splash introducing Solid Queue, Solid Cable, Solid Jobs, and all of these things allowed you to use your database to run these services that previously required other things like Redis or memcached. So now we can run, for instance, our background workers, our jobs, our action cable, WebSockets, all using the database that you already need to build a Rails application. Even more than that, we got a lot of work on the SQLite database adapter in particular. And what that allowed us to do is have a little more faith in SQLite for a production system. So for reasonable workloads, some might even argue that it's faster under certain conditions, you can use SQLite as your database in production for Rails. This is huge because it takes away the need for all these other dependencies, whether it's your MySQL or your Postgres database, or maybe Redis or memcached. SQLite can take the place of all these things and run right next to your application on the same hardware. Without going too deep into why you might want to use SQLite, let's assume that you are using SQLite for a moment, or that you're interested in it, and you're wondering, Postgres, for instance, has a managed service. If I was using AWS, I could use their RDS service. If I was using any of these other cloud providers, I could use their managed database service, and they can have automatic backups. So what is the solution if you're using SQLite in production to give your users peace of mind that they're not going to lose their data? Because it happens. We run a bad migration and it deletes a lot of our data, or something crazy happens with the server and we lose the data that was on that volume. That could happen whether you're on premises or in the cloud even. So how do we protect against that? That's what I'm going to show you today. There's a number of different techniques, but this was so easy that I was able to easily integrate it into an existing app of mine in about 10 minutes or so. And I wanted to show you how you can, in just a few minutes, have backups and have a little bit more peace of mind, maybe sleep a little bit more soundly, knowing that your user's data is safe. So let's jump right into it. This is the technology underneath what I'm going to show you. It's called Lightstream. And as you can see, they tout no worry backups, continuously stream your SQLite changes to all these different cloud providers and storage options. You can use your existing app. It'll run in a separate process, so there's no direct dependency there. And like they say, it's dirt cheap. And I'll show you what I'm using at the end. So let's start over here. No worry backups. So you should be familiar with AWS S3. So S3 allows you to store objects in the cloud and not have to worry too much about what are the actual hard drives or file systems underneath it. It's just stick a file at a certain location and you trust that AWS will keep it there. And a lot of other services have mimicked the same functionality, and you can see the list here. So this tool, we're taking a quick look at Lightstream's documentation just so that you're familiar with the actual tool that we're using underneath what I will show you in just a moment, which is a gem that pretty much takes all of the busy work out of setting Lightstream up. And you can read all about the different reasons why and mechanisms that it uses in SQLite to make this work. And they also list out some of the alternative options that you do have, so you might want to check those out. For Rails in particular, I think Lightstream hits the sweet spot of the right trade-offs for your typical Rails app that would be using SQLite in production. It's better than periodic SQLite backups where you just copy the file, because if you didn't know, SQLite databases are just files on the file system. You could stop your application, copy the file, restart your application. That's one way you could back it up. LightFS, you may want to look at fly.io because they have a managed SQLite database offering using this technology. So if you're on fly.io, you might want to check that out, either instead of or in addition to this. So now you know about Lightstream. It's a separate process that runs and checks periodically for changes to your SQLite database and ships those up to the cloud piecemeal. You don't have to install any strange extensions to your SQLite database. It just runs on the side and quietly streams your changes to the database to the cloud. Now let's take a look at the gem. This is from Stephen Markheim, who is Fractaled Mind here on GitHub. This gem is called Lightstream Ruby. Could it get any easier than this? Bundle add Lightstream Lightstream, Rails generate Lightstream install. And what that will do is create these two files. And with that, I think we can jump into my actual code. So here I have highlighted the Lightstream line that was added when I ran bundle add. Here is the lightstream.yaml that you get. So you can define all the different databases, and you can see this is a production setup with a separate cable, queue, cache, and main database. And here's the initializer you get, and you can see I am using it completely vanilla, completely default. You can do a lot of customizations here, but I'm using it just the way that it was scaffolded, and it works great. And here, a little preview of what's coming. If you're using an S3 compatible backend, you will need an access key ID and access key itself. You'll need the bucket. Again, if you're using an S3 compatible but not S3 itself backend, you'll have to specify which endpoint you're using. And that is pretty much all you need to set this up. I'm not going to show you my credentials, but I do have this set up, and I've been testing the backup and replication functionality of this gem. You can see it shows you a few of the things that you've already seen from my setup, and you can run it as a separate process, or you can run it as a Puma plugin. Let's go back over here. You can see that I'm using it as a plugin, and it's working great in production for me. And here is the command to restore a database. So let's say that I want to restore the production database. Let's go ahead and run that. So here's an interesting thing that you need to know. The path that you pass it needs to match the path that is specified in your databases in the lightstream.yaml. So that way you can select, if I want to restore the queue, maybe I lost some jobs, I want to restore the queue, I would specify that. But here I'm going to specify the production.SQLite. There it is. We have our usual databases, and in addition to that, we have our production.SQLite. So in order to restore the production database, again, I need to specify that path, and I have my credentials set up in a .env file, and so that's where it's sourcing the credentials to be able to do this. So it takes a little bit, and it runs in the background, and then after a while you'll see this output, and then you'll see these production SQLite 3 and some temporary files that it used to construct the production instance. So now, how can we verify that this worked? I'm obviously running in development, so one quick and dirty way that I can do this is change to production.SQLite 3. Now I haven't restarted the server yet because I want to show you what this looks like before. So here are the things that I have. I've got some on January 22nd. I've got an error here. That's what things are looking like. Over here, I'm signed in as admin at example.com. So that's my local database. Over here, where I'm signed in on my production instance, I have some as recent as February 14th, and I don't have any errors. You can see I'm signed in as Caleb at RailsQuest. So what happens if I restart Rails with the new production database selected? With the new production database selected, I'm signed in as Caleb at RailsQuest, and I have all of the data from the production site. And then to switch back, I just change that value back to development, refresh the page, and I'm back to my development data. So it doesn't get much easier than that. That's the whole process from setting up the configuration with these environment variables to restoring a database if you ever need to do that. And I recommend that you practice doing that when it's not an emergency. So practice doing it, be familiar with the commands, maybe even write them in your README so that when the time comes that you need to do that, it's no sweat. You can go in and run the commands with confidence. So I said I would show you what I'm using. I'm using Backblaze. It's a nice, affordable option. And my current usage of this with one application that doesn't see a lot of traffic is free. So that's a nice perk. It's in the free tier. $6 per terabyte per month. There's usage-based costs, and so there's a lot of caveats there. I encourage you to do your own due diligence, figure out what host works for you. I've used AWS, Azure, Backblaze quite a bit, and Cloudflare also has R2, and I like Cloudflare's services as well. And they have some nice benefits, no egress charges. That isn't really a selling point for this use case because your egress, your data coming out of your bucket, is not going to be as much because you're mostly going to be using that feature when you restore the database, which hopefully you won't ever need to do. too. So just a few things to consider if you're looking at and comparing different options. I'm using Backblaze. It works great. It's one of the supported providers that Lightstream has a nice guide for, and I followed this guide, had no issues at all. So if you use any of these services, you're going to be good to go. And with that, that is the Lightstream tool, and specifically the Lightstream gem with Rails. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you get something useful out of it. If you did or didn't, let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe before you go, and I wish you all a blessed week. I'll catch you again next time.